How did Emperor Palpatine return for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker? Congrats, Star Wars fans! You made it! Star Wars Celebration is in full swing this week, and the long-awaited Episode 9 panel had everything fans could have ever hoped for, from old faves like Billy D. Williams to new characters like the droid D.O., and of course, the first teaser and title reveal for Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker! That was my Rise of Skywalker dance. The folks behind Star Wars have been calling this the end of the Skywalker saga for a while now, and that was definitely a point that was doubled down on at the Episode 9 panel with director J.J. Abrams and Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. So while that title gives us a lot to think about as well as great moments sprinkled throughout the trailer, it's the mic drop moment that revealed Palpatine was back that had fans losing their collective shit. Is he still alive? Has he been living on the remains of the Death Star all by himself? Is he a clone? So many questions. But before we can get into all of that, let's break down a bit of what we did see. Getting right into it, that shot of Rey in a new outfit that's close to her Force Awakens getup, flipping through the air over who we assume is Kylo's TIE Interceptor, is bonkers. Could this be her and Kylo's final showdown, or could she be training with Kylo? Both make sense. We also got our first look at Lando in the cockpit of the Falcon, rocking his old school yellow Solo attire. Plus, did you spot that new radar dish? The Falcon's getting another upgrade, baby! But of course, the most oh shit moment is that the remains of the Death Star 2, ya bet your butt it is. And it's this moment that we are going to focus on from here on out. However, if you would like more of a shot-for-shot breakdown, check out Nerdist.com for all the info on every frame. Now, during this shot of the fallen Death Star, Luke's voiceover says, "No one's ever really gone." We hear a very familiar laugh. That's right, it's the laugh of Sheev Palpatine, the Emperor himself.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
So how certain are we that Palpatine is coming back for Episode 9? Well, on the panel preceding the teaser, J.J. Abrams mentioned the heroes teaming up to fight the greatest evil, and since Supreme Leader Snoke has been sliced and diced, there's room for a new, or in this case, old, big bad in Star Wars. Couple that with the fact that Darth Sidious actor Ian McDiarmid was on hand at Celebration after the teaser ended to stoke the flames. Snoke the flames here. So yes, it's safe to assume that Palpatine is back, but how has he returned? Well, there are a few ways that JJ could handle his return, but we're gonna break down the most likely.
Do it.
Now, to figure all of this out, we have to turn to the secret and ancient tomes known as Star Wars books, video games, and cartoons for answers. And no, we're not talking about the Legends canon where the Emperor cloned himself. If you've been reading, watching, or playing anything made after Disney streamlined Star Wars canon into one cohesive beast, you might have already realized that Star Wars has set up the possibility of the return of what J.J. Abrams called the greatest evil. Now, the last time we saw the Emperor, he was taking a swan dive down a reactor shaft of the Death Star before Lando and company blew it up with some fancy flying and well-placed torpedoes. While there is always a chance that Palpatine could somehow be alive after all of this, we're guessing no. We're thinking we will be seeing Palpatine in spirit form instead of corporeal form. Obviously, Force ghosts are nothing new in the Star Wars universe. In fact, they were even hinted at in the beginning of the teaser with Luke saying, "We've passed on all we know, 1,000 generations live in you now." And we've seen plenty of good guys become Force ghosts, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin, but what about bad guys like Sheev Palpatine? In the films, we haven't heard from any Sith Lords after death, but on the cartoon side of things, we have gotten more glimpses into dark side mythology. In the series finale of the Clone Wars cartoon, Yoda confronts the spirit, or the illusion of the spirit, of Darth Bane, the Sith Lord who created the infamous Rule of Two that dictates that there are only two Sith Lords at a given time, Master and Apprentice. Ironically, Darth Bane was voiced by Mark Hamill himself.
Ironic.
Now, this spirit wasn't the peaceful blue of the Jedi Force ghosts. Darth Bane looked like he was made from cinders, smoke, and fire. Important to note that the spirit of Darth Bane retained his memories and personality even in death, so it's not hard to imagine a scenario where this could apply to Palpatine as well. But why would he want to stick around as a ghost when his precious empire fell to ashes around him? Because he caused the destruction of the Empire. What? Like any good Sith Lord, Palpatine was interested in amassing power for himself, not for anybody else. He wasn't interested in a galactic empire that he was not at the very top of. The Aftermath novels by Chuck Wendig and 2017's Star Wars Battlefront 2 video game dive deep into the fall of the Galactic Empire, and it's a bit more complex than the good guys kept beating the bad guys. Through the book series and the game, we find out that Palpatine had a plan for the Empire after his death, and it wasn't one you would expect. Palpatine's contingency involved severely damaging planets that were loyal to the Empire and setting the Imperial Armed Forces up for their cataclysmic defeat at the Battle of Jakku at the hands of the New Republic. In fact, Aftermath author Chuck Wendig even tweeted after the release of the Episode 9 teaser, "I'm just saying now's probably a good time to at least read or reread Aftermath Empire's End because, you know." Another thing Palpatine's contingency did was fill the unknown regions, a region of the Star Wars galaxy that is extremely hard to navigate and is mostly uncharted, with equipment, ships, and select Imperial personnel. It was this group of Palpatine loyalists that became the First Order, and after the events of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, are now in charge of the entire galaxy. So why would he destroy his empire and plant the seeds for it to be reborn, unless he thought he could have a hand in its return? The reason people were probably so underwhelmed by Supreme Leader Snoke and his seeming lack of backstory was because he was nothing more than a puppet figurehead of the First Order, with Palpatine somehow pulling the strings from beyond the grave. Since it appears that Palpatine is back, what could his plan for the galaxy be now? Remember that the whole Skywalker saga has been shaped by the Emperor's meddling, from manipulating midichlorians to create Anakin Skywalker to the creation of the First Order. J.J. Abrams has promised that this film will tie all of the trilogies together, and the return of Palpatine is definitely a way to accomplish that. We'll just have to wait till December to see how Rey, Finn, Poe, and Kylo Ren react to the return of this old adversary.
So be it, Jedi.
But what do you think? Was Rey fighting Kylo Ren in the TIE Interceptor, or were they training together? Did Palpatine use midichlorians to create Rey as well as Anakin? And if nobody is ever really gone, as Luke said, does this mean we'll see the return of everyone's favorite diner owner, Dexter Jetster? Let's discuss. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and mash that little bell to get notified every time we go live with the show or drop a new video. And starting Monday, we'll be talking all things Game of Thrones with our weekly after show, All Kings Considered. Join myself, fellow Nerdist favorites like Dan, Casey, and more special guests as we break down everything happening in Westeros this season. Biggest moments, wildest theories, episode MVPs. We're gonna get into all of it and more. Pull up a chair, pour yourself a goblet of Dornish wine, and tune in every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific right here on Nerdist YouTube and Geek and Sundry's Twitch.